And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from my studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's January the 1st, the first day of 2026. Just 364 days remain to this year's over with, and we'll start 2027. Well, holidays and observances. Polar Bear Plunge Day. Take that chilly plunge. All for a noble cause, of course. Uniting people in a frozen adventure to support those in need. National Bloody Mary Day. Global Family Day. And Mummers Parade. The Mummers Parade, if you're not familiar with it, it's a festive, colorful celebration. Occurs annually in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Locals dress up in various vibrant costumes, play lively music, and perform entertaining skits that draw crowds in a joyful festival. Thousands of participants from various types of mummer clubs parade along Broad Street, making it one of the oldest folk festivals in the U.S. Participants perform for the parade's audience in 5 different divisions: fancy brigades, comics, string bands. The fancy brigades showcase elaborate costumes with intricate designs. Comics delight the crowd with humorous performances. String bands bring music to life with their lively melodies. It reflects Philadelphia's rich cultural diversity. And some folks I've talked to have seen it say it's an unforgettable view. National Hangover Day. Ellis Island Day. That's a historic gateway where countless dreams embarked, welcoming diverse stories from distant lands and shaping the American tapestry. And then there's Commitment Day, sticking to promises made and showing up when it counts. Proves that dedication does run deep. And then there's Ring a Bell Day, creating a joyful melody that resonates. Sound that marks moments of celebration and togetherness and simple pleasure of sharing happiness. And there's National First Foot Day. Welcome the new year with a Scottish twist. Be the first to cross the threshold after midnight to ensure prosperity in the coming year. Apple Gifting Day. You know, an apple a day, they say, keeps the blues away. That's a perfect gift for teachers and colleagues, anybody who needs a little extra sweetness in their life. Euro Day. Travelers across Europe often find themselves exchanging these colorful bills, each note a symbol of unity in this continent's rich tapestry. And New Year's Dishonor List Day. Expressing yourself with fresh language is always in fashion, but avoid using tired cliches and worn-out buzzwords. Copyright Law Day. In the realm of creative ownership, there's an invisible shield that guards an artist's work, ensuring it's respected and rewarded. And there's Z Day. Woo-ho, A's and B's, it's Z's time to shine. Give those Z names a chance to lead the pack for once. The Rose Bowl game. World Day of Peace. And of course, it's the one and only New Year's Day. Perfect time to set goals and make positive changes in your life. There's Sudan National Day, exploring the resilience and the rich cultural heritage of the Sudanese communities. Sheds light on their journey and challenges. Haitian Independence Day celebrates that triumphant moment when a nation broke free. Triumph of the Revolution. In 1959, a group of rebels overthrew the Cuban government, sparking a revolution that would transform that country. Solemnity of Mary, celebrate the Mother of Jesus through prayer and reflection and attending Mass. Marks a time to honor Mary's role in Christianity. Zagreb Advent, which goes on through the 7th. Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. Time for family and delicious eats and stories that remind us of hope's enduring glow in the darkest of times. And then, of course, there's Kwanzaa, uniting in cultural richness, illuminating principles like unity and purpose and creativity. Christmas Bird Count Week, Festival of Winter Walks, embracing crisp air and crunching snow underfoot. Diet Resolution Week, exploring vibrant, nutrient-rich choices to fuel vitality and well-being. National Silent Record Week, Universal Hour of Peace, join millions around the world in a moment of global harmony and positivity. And St. Basil's Day, celebrated in Orthodox Christianity. This saint's feast day is marked with traditional meals, religious services, and cultural festivities. His legacy continues to inspire. And famous people born on this date? Well, number one was my father. And then, of course, we've got J. Edgar Hoover. Well, on that note, let's see what stories we have on the news this New Year's Day. The President Trump targets Minnesota's fraud allegations. He says we're going to get to the bottom of all those. He railed against alleged social service fraud in Minnesota during remarks at this year's New Year's Eve celebration at Mar-a-Lago. He says, can you imagine? They stole $18 billion. That's just what we're learning about, and that's peanuts. And California's even worse. Illinois is worse, and sadly, so's New York. He says, we're going to get to the bottom of all those frauds, and it was one giant scam. The President Trump's comments came as Minnesota's been hit with widespread fraud allegations, whose loss is estimated up to $1 billion, and federal prosecutors have indicted and charged dozens of people in connection with the alleged fraudulent activity. We'll see what comes of it, or if another cover-up, which the Democrats are brilliant at doing, takes place. Well, New York City is about to test Mamdani's progressive economic vision. With nearly 9 million residents in the world's largest financial hub, New York City is about to test the progressive economic vision of the mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. Proposals such as free buses, city-owned grocery stores, and rent freezes have already rattled Wall Street, prompting sharp criticism from Mamdani's critics. The clash underscores a widening divide between progressive ambitions for the city and the financial sector that's been long powered that economy. The affordability sits at the center of his agenda. The sad thing, a lot of this socialistic pipe dreams have never worked, and now we're going to try to one of the largest scales in the world. Well, he's preparing to run America's largest city. And there's quite an interesting breakdown he's given of how he plans to address it all. Starting with those city-owned grocery stores. He's committed to creating a network of city-owned grocery stores focused on keeping prices low, not really making a profit. Not having to pay rent or property taxes or reduce overhead and pass on savings to shoppers. They'll buy and sell at wholesale prices, centralize warehousing and distribution, and partner with local neighborhoods on products and sourcing. Now, he's got control over the city-run program, so he can accomplish this goal by securing New York City Council approval. The problem is, with most social programs, the folks that you should be able to depend on like to dip their hand into the till periodically. And then, of course, there are free bus rides. He's vowed to permanently eliminate the fare on every city bus and make them faster by rapidly building a priority lane, expanding bus queue jump signals, and dedicated loading zones to keep double parkers out of the way. Well, the time we lived there, there was no way it would have worked then. He's going to raise the minimum wage to $30 by 2030. And he's going to raise that minimum wage over the next 4 years, he said. And he said after that, the minimum wage automatically increase based on the cost of living and productivity increases, allowing the city council to create its own minimum wage law. He's proposed a way to raise the minimum wage in New York City without the state approval. But a state-level increase is very unlikely. And then there'll be free child care. He's also campaigned to provide every New York City family has a child up to 5 years old with free child care. Now, how does this get paid for? Unless people donate their time, it's going to be with tax money. And he thinks with raising the minimum wage, there'll be more taxes to dip into. We experienced 3 years of New York City taxes. When we left, the city owed us $16,000 we knew we'd never see. Well, it's not very clear how he proposes to finance this. Experts estimate it could cost billions of dollars annually. He previously floated a tax increase on the wealthiest New Yorkers and corporations to pay for the increased services. That would require state-level approval, and a lot of New York City companies have left for Florida and Texas. Then he's going to freeze the rents. He's pledged to freeze rents for tenants in rent-stabilized apartments, expand affordable housing using city resources. While the rent freeze may sound like a straightforward fix to New York City's affordability crisis, housing experts warn it would backfire by discouraging investment and pushing rents higher in non-stabilized units. The New York Apartment Association CEO, Kenny Burgos, said the policy would deter developers. He said, I don't know any investor or builder who would want to build in a city where the mayor is threatening to cap revenues. And tax corporations in New York City's top 1%. Said he would fund his programs through a revenue plan that would raise the corporate tax rates to match New Jersey's 11.5%, bringing in $5 billion. And then he'd tax the wealthiest 1% of New Yorkers, those earning above $1 million annually, hit them with a flat 2% tax. Well, he's certainly done the math. A plan like this requires approval, though, from the state legislature and the signature of the governor. And while New York Governor Kathy Hochul has voiced her opposition to tax hikes, which would create some hurdles for Mondami's marquee campaign promise, we'll see if the top 1% is going to shell out that money, or are they going to run for Florida and Texas? Well, dozens are feared dead in a fire at a Swiss Alps bar during New Year's celebrations. Dozens of New Year's revelers are feared dead Thursday after a massive fire ripped through a bar in the Swiss Alps. That chaotic blaze at the La Constellation venue in the Alpine Ski Resort municipality of Crans-Montana in Switzerland, which erupted around 1:30 in the morning during a New Year's celebration, also left around 100 injured, a lot of them seriously. Evening should have been a moment of celebration and coming together, but it turned into a nightmare, according to Matthias Renard, head of the regional government. Several tens of people were killed at the bar. Valais Canton Police Commander Frederick Geisler added during a news conference. Well, Nick Shirley fires back at CBS News reporter suggesting Minnesota daycare centers weren't fraudulent. Independent journalist Nick Shirley called out CBS News reporter Jonah Kaplan over his video claiming the Minnesota daycare centers Shirley visited were not fraudulent. Kaplan, who works for CBS News Minneapolis affiliate, posted a video shared on CBS News X account Tuesday that offered its own analysis of nearly a dozen daycare centers Shirley visited in his viral video. In his video, Kaplan reported that while the locations Shirley highlighted have received citations for issues related to safety and cleanliness, he said there was absolutely no evidence of fraud. He said, we visited those sites too, as did state inspectors many times over the last 6 months, and found the facts on the ground and tell a different story. Kaplan's video received widespread backlash for not showing their investigation, leading Shirley himself to respond. He said, why don't you go to the daycare yourself and you'll see it's firsthand. You can just keep yapping on selfie mode. Well, we're going to see how much of this. What's happening now? It's absolutely fascinating how my system has decided it has its own job it wants to do at doing its own way. Well, in Iran, that country's in shutdown as protesters storm governor's office. Crowds chant Delta Khamenei. Iran ground near some standstill Wednesday as businesses and universities and government offices closed under a government-ordered shutdown amid protests caused by a growing political and economic crisis. 21-year-old volunteer member of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard was killed Wednesday in a western province, Iranian state media reported, marking the first death among security forces during the protest. And that death was reported in Kudash, the city in Iran's Lorestan province, about 250 miles west of Tehran. Saeed Pirali, deputy governor in the Lorestan province, said the guard member was martyred at the hands of rioters during protests in this city in defense of public order. That's according to the Iranian Student News Network. Video footage circulated online and shared by the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran shows intense clashes between protests and security forces in cities including Shiraz, Isfahan, Kermanshah, and Tehran. In those videos, protesters chant anti-regime slogans and confront security forces in crowded streets. Well, that teenage girl who disappeared in San Antonio Christmas Eve has been found dead by suicide in a nearby field after a days-long search. Texas authorities confirmed a missing San Antonio teen who vanished on Christmas Eve actually took her own life. Camila Mendoza Olmos, 19, was last seen alive at about 7 in the morning, December 24th, walking a few blocks from her home. Body was found Tuesday in a field just a few hundred yards from her home next to a gun, according to a report from the affiliate Fox 7 Austin. Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office identified the bodies almost on Wednesday, determined the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head, and ruling the manner of death was a suicide. That's according to the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff's Office previously said almost had a history of suicidal ideation and depression. Said there were no signs of foul play. Well, Elon Musk is now mocking MS Now, a contributor for denying genetic differences between ethnicities during heated debate. He criticized MS Now contributor Paola Ramos after she went viral last week with a clip in which she repeatedly denied there are any genetic differences between groups of different ancestry. Ramos shared a clip on her Instagram from an interview she did with pronatalist activist. The pronatalist movement believes modern civilization is undergoing a destructive decline in the birth rate, which has to be undone by encouraging people to have more children. In her Instagram caption, she warned that a movement that encourages people to have more babies is once again gaining momentum on the far right. Remember, Trump said he wants to be the president of fertility. Ramos, the daughter of Telemundo journalist and prominent Trump critic Jorge Ramos, spoke with neuroscientist Malcolm Collins and his wife Simone Collins. The couple wrote the Pragmatist Guide series and are advocates of maintaining healthy cultures and birth rates to uphold civilization. In the interview clip, which went viral, Ramos challenges Malcolm, saying, "Malcolm, you said things like black women are biologically different than white women." He said, yes, they are. They have different fertility windows. They got a higher rate of fertility complications. Then Ramos went on to say there's no scientific evidence to prove that a black woman and a white woman are genetically different. Well, there was quite an exchange of views between the two groups. Well, a Maine mother is asking the Supreme Court to step in after school allegedly hid her child's gender transition. A Maine mother is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to hear her parental rights case, alleging school staff encouraged her child to socially identify as a different gender at school without her knowledge. Amber Levine claims that in December 2022, she learned her 13-year-old daughter was given a chest binder by a school social worker, and school staff had used a different name and pronouns for her child at the school without informing her. She sued the school board in April 2023, arguing school officials violated her constitutional rights to control and direct the upbringing and education of her child. Federal judge, one of God's anointed, dismissed the case in 2024, concluding that she'd failed to establish a legal claim under which the school board could be held liable. First, U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that dismissal in July of 2025. Her attorneys at the Goldwater Institute have now petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court to take up the case. You know, these judges who, the moment they get that black robe, become the most brilliant people that ever walked the face of the planet, are literally taking society apart. Well, there are 6 financial resolutions so-called experts maintain you ought to make today to protect tomorrow. First is max out your retirement contributions. Having money set aside and hopefully compounding for retirement's a good financial practice. Prune your subscriptions. Every business wants to rent your life back to get a subscription plan. That doesn't mean you have to go along with it. Renegotiate recurring bills. Our service providers love to raise fees on us, but they also don't like to lose business. And that's from your cable, internet, and cell phone providers to your insurance carriers. Call them and tell them you're thinking about switching. See if they'll make a deal. Get your family's financial affairs in order. The new year's a perfect time to audit your family's affairs. Do the relevant people have access to your family's wishes and information are relevant to dealing with aging and medical emergencies or passing on? Meet with a financial planner. Of course, most of those that I've known are a sandwich or two short of a full picnic. And consider hedges to your own portfolio. Given the spending of the government and our country's fiscal foundation, it's good to consider hedges to your foundation. Whether you're looking at precious metals or other alternative assets, it can hedge against the deterioration of your purchasing power. Consider a dollar cost averaging program. These things supposedly will help you head into retirement comfortable. Well, President Trump has shared his own New Year's resolutions. He revealed those on Wednesday after being asked if he had one. He said, "Peace on earth," standing alongside First Lady Melania Trump at his Mar-a-Lago property in Florida. And the White House official rapid response account on X shared a Fox News post on X featuring a video clip of the president's comments. And the one-year anniversary of the beginning of President Trump's second term is less than a month away. He's sworn in January 20, 2025. And since taking office, he sought to promote peace around the globe and has presided over a multitude of military actions. Well, Mexican authorities have seized $40 million in motorcycles from Olympic snowboarder turned fugitive, according to the FBI. FBI officials in Los Angeles said $40 million in motorcycles believed to be owned by a former Canadian Olympic snowboarder and FBI fugitive Ryan Wedding are seized by Mexican authorities in a number of busts in December. Officials revealed the seizures in a post on social media Wednesday, more than a month after Wedding was hit with additional charges, and they raised the reward for his capture to $15 million. Somebody's going to have a nice 2026 if they can help find him. Well, the DOJ has outlined 10 wins under President Trump, says the agency is restored after the Biden era. Department of Justice outlined a list of its accomplishments during President Trump's first year back in office. Argued the agency's ended the political weaponization it says existed under the Biden administration. The DOJ claimed in a statement posted on X it's turned around the agency, restored fairness and law enforcement priorities. Well, hope it stays that way. Well, a tech billionaire, Planetary CEO Alex Karp, has bought an Aspen area ranch for $120 million. He bought St. Benedict's Monastery. Marks the priciest residential sale in Pitkin County history. It was once home to Trappist monks, and Karp bought it, as I said, for a hefty $120 million. Aspen Area Ranch has become the latest in his growing list of real estate holdings. It's located in Snowmass, Colorado. It's about 30 miles from Aspen. Originally asking $150 million, went on the market last year. Ken Murr of Murr Ranch Group, one of the listing agents, gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal. It's a 3,700-acre property, which includes the monastery, and it marks the priciest residential sale to date in Colorado's Pitkin County, as I said. For 70 years, under the ownership of Trappist monks, only a few still live there. And while Murr didn't disclose the buyer's identity, he noted that the buyer won't use the property as a home. Well, let's see. Anything else we need to discuss? Well, the IRS has released guidance for President Trump's no tax on tips and overtime deductions. Workers conduct up to $25,000 in tips and over $12,000 in overtime pay under the new tax law provisions. And there's also a host of new tax benefits Americans take advantage of when filing their taxes in a few weeks. IRS released its guidance for the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. These are for workers who claim deductions for the 2025 tax year. And we'll see how that works out. Well, Dr. Mark Siegel said there were 5 incredible miracles in 2025 that gave him hope for 2026. The first is the hostages. Eli Sharabi was taken hostage by Hamas October 7, 2023, and released February 8, 2025, as part of a peace agreement. Only to find out that his wife Leanne and their daughters Noya and Yayo and his brother Yossi were also taken hostage, and they'd been murdered. 2, there have been medical breakthroughs. Advances in cancer immunotherapy have been prodigious and promising for 2026. Cancer vaccine, including mRNA-based therapies, now target proteins on the surface of the cancer and open a door for further targeted therapies, such as antibody drug conjugates. Artificial intelligence has made advances. I've been experimenting with it. It's fascinating to see what it can do. Nexobrid, that treatment saved a lot of lives among bug burn victims after the October 7, 2023 Hamas attacks. One family, the Golans, were literally burned alive in their kibbutz home and survived. They were healed with the help of Nexobrid. And baby KJ Muldoon, actually a Christmas miracle, surviving an otherwise deadly genetic abnormality that caused the buildup of urema that the kidney is disposed to filter out of the body and leads to a massive buildup of toxic ammonia. But with genetic editing from CRISPR, KJ's genetic mutation was fixed. Well, so there's hope for 2026. Well, let's go to our topic for today. It's going to be a little bit different. Somebody asked me, were there any New Year's mysteries that I was aware of? And I did find a few. I've got 16 New Year's Eve mysteries. From holiday homicides to festive foul play, they're the perfect antidote for your end-of-the-year hangover. Let's see. A lot of new books have come out. In fact, I've got quite a number of new releases. In fact, in this next book, I'm going to hit my magic number of 100 published books. You know, a lot of folks look forward to the new year. After all, it's a time of high hopes and merriment and new beginnings. But ringing in the new year takes on a far darker meaning when it comes to all these 12 mysteries that take place right as the ball drops. And unfortunately, seems to be an internet hiccup on my particular thing. Let's see. Alrighty. Let's go see what else I've got. You know, and all this, the merriment that's going on in Washington, D.C., there's an interesting thing that came to light that I found absolutely fascinating. You know, when the White House was built, there's a lot of photographs showing a cornerstone was laid down. Well, would you believe that cornerstone has actually disappeared? In 1792, stonemasons laid the cornerstone for the White House. The first piece of the most important government building in Washington, D.C. And to this day, descriptions of the cornerstone vary from something small you can carry to something that's massive. The men that put it there were brothers in one of the world's most secretive organizations, the Freemasons. After they put it down, when folks came back to work the next day, the cornerstone was gone. It just vanished. Some say it's been stolen, others say it's missing or just misplaced. And the rumors about the stone itself are even wilder. In some descriptions, the stone was inscribed by our founding fathers. In others, it's supposed to be hollow, containing landmark documents of great unimagined wisdom, as if you can get wisdom out of Washington, D.C. A lot of folks believe that stone was stolen by the Freemasons themselves, though they, of course, deny any involvement in such a theft. Whatever the case might be, for more than 250 years, the location of this cornerstone, the very first piece of the White House, has been a mystery. In fact, everybody from Harry Truman to Barbara Bush has gone looking for it, and they found no sign of it. Well, the word cornerstone itself has come to mean far more than just its purpose in a building. By definition, a cornerstone is the very first piece of a building to be set into place. And its placement, of course, determines where everything else goes. Foundation is built outward from the cornerstone, beginning place and reference point. When it comes to starting the construction of a building, especially when constructing a public building, the laying of the cornerstones also come to serve a symbolic and ceremonial purpose as well. As the cornerstone is laid, dignitaries and officials gather and pontificate and make their speeches and pound on their chest about what wonderful things they've done. Often a time capsule is buried near or sometimes beneath the cornerstone. And some cornerstones contain a hollow cavity that's lined with zinc to protect the time capsule. And generally, a plaque noting the date and time, maybe the names of those present affixed to the outer face of the stone for everybody to see. Put this all together and you get a stone that announces this structure is being built for the ages. Now go back to 1792. Cornerstone's being laid for the White House. The building is going to be the residence for the President of the United States on a site selected by George Washington himself. So how vital was the White House back then? Well, actually, it was as vital as it is today. In fact, a design of the public competition was held. Among the entrants, Thomas Jefferson. He submitted his entry under a false name. For the first few years, America had been governed from Philadelphia, but now this would be the first major government construction in the city that would serve as the nation's capital, the true seat of power for the United States. Well, as we set out to find the cornerstone of the White House, A lot of authors and historians weighed in. Janine Fogel is an expert on the structures that make up Washington, D.C. She pointed out that the placement of the cornerstone can be structural, also can be ceremonial. In the new city of Washington, D.C., she said the cornerstone meant even more than that. These were not just new buildings being erected. This was the building of a new nation. And more than that, the United States of America was a whole new type of nation. Nothing like America had ever been tried before in the history of the world, at least that we know of. So, of course, the cornerstone of the buildings that would house the vibrant young nation's government would mean more than just symbolic blocks of stone. In building the White House, they were building something exciting and public and, frankly, something dramatic. It's not hard to imagine the enthusiasm and anticipation as a competition was decided. George Washington made some adjustments to the winning entry, and as the preliminary site preparations took place, well, all of this led to the big moment of laying the foundation block, the cornerstone. So what kind of ceremony do you think would have been done for something like that? Who would have made up the guest list? Who got to speak? Because the founding fathers loved to hear themselves talk. And where was the time capsule buried? Was it inside the cornerstone? Well, the answer to all those questions and to most others involving the White House cornerstone, the answer is we just don't have any idea. Other than a single newspaper account that was published a month after the cornerstone was laid down, there are no written records of this event, which is unbelievable in and of itself. But thanks to that newspaper story, we do know when the cornerstone was laid. Saturday, October 13th, 1792. But even that date sometimes disputed. One legend says the stone was laid on Columbus Day, October 12th, and put into place by George Washington himself. That's a great story, but unfortunately it wasn't true. At that point in time, Washington himself was in Philadelphia. And while 1792 was indeed the year the Columbus Day observances first began to be held, there was one in New York City that year. The day hadn't yet achieved the holiday significance we currently know. So the first step in building the White House was not timed to coincide with Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas. But it might have been timed to coincide with another anniversary. Well, as I said earlier in this segment, the cornerstone was said to have been laid by the Freemasons. And they're the largest and oldest fraternity in the world. Some say they were a secret fraternity. They say their fraternity was secrets. Others say they date back to the building of King Solomon's Temple. From Voltaire to Winston Churchill, the Freemasons have spent centuries inducting the most powerful members of society into their membership. In the U.S., they grew that power to new heights, from Benjamin Franklin to Benedict Arnold, Mark Twain to John Wayne, Bob Dole to Jesse Jackson, even Harry Houdini. All were Masons, and quite a number of presidents. So when it comes to conspiracies surrounding America's history, no group gets mentioned and blamed more often than the Freemasons. Both James Hoban, the architect that won the design competition for the new executive mansion, and George Washington, who selected the site on which the mansion was going to be built, were both Freemasons. Hoban himself, in fact, had founded the Washington Masonic Lodge. It's still present today in Washington, D.C. 8 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Masons, 9 signers of the U.S. Constitution, 5 Chief Justices of the Supreme Court, and 15 times they took the White House, from George Washington to Teddy Roosevelt, FDR, Truman, LBJ, and Ford. So you tell me that this many people helped shape our country's earliest days are also members of the same secret fraternity? Well, that raises a lot of questions, folks. What does that brotherhood stand for? And what does it want? Well, according to that newspaper article, on Saturday the 13th, first stone was laid in the southwest corner of the president's house in the city of Washington by the Freemasons of Georgetown and its vicinity. Procession was formed at the Fountain Inn in Georgetown. Ceremonies performed by Brother Casanova, master of the lodge, who delivered an oration well adapted to the occasion. That came out of a letter that was sent to the Charleston City Gazette. So you might ask yourself at this point, what do the Freemasons believe? Well, there are only two requirements. Number one, you have to believe that there is a supreme being. It can be any God, be it Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or any other. But you do have to believe in God. And two, you can't have a criminal record. Well, that would leave out today most elected officials. For centuries, the Freemasons have included the powerful among their members. A membership devoted both to good works and adherence to traditional virtues, but also to the preservation of ancient knowledge and lore known only to the members. So what does all this have to do with the Cornerstone? As the organization's name implies, trades that were associated with the art of building, much of it still resting on techniques and principles that stretch back to the earliest days of civilization, played an important part in Freemasonry's founding and growth. This organization honors Euclid, the father of geometry, for the role geometry plays in accurate surveying, site layout, and building. And among those construction principles, according to Scott Brown, an expert on the history of the White House and himself a Mason in the Washington, D.C. Lodge, excuse me, is the location of a building's cornerstone. He said, "We know that stone was laid masonically, and Masons always put the cornerstone in the northeast corner of a new building. And the Masons organization is said to have amassed a large body of historical material, artifacts, and items and documents they keep solely to themselves. And to that end, Freemasonry has also been surrounded by rumors of hidden powers and maybe of even being the secret masters pulling the strings that guide the world." Well, it was the Freemasons who were there on that night in 1792 when the White House cornerstone was first set in place. So when it was suggested that the stone was actually removed from the building site and placed somewhere else for safekeeping, the question becomes, where would Freemasons have put it? And why would they do it? Well, these questions led investigators to one of the largest bodies of collected knowledge on earth, the Library of Congress. And you'd think the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. would have a substantial collection of documents related to the construction of the White House. In reality, among all the hundreds of millions of books and magazines and newspapers and pamphlets and virtually every other kind of information ever created, there's exactly one document dealing with the laying of the White House cornerstone. And that particular document was actually written anonymously. And the item in question is actually a copy of the Charleston City Gazette, dated October 20th, 1792, just over a month after the cornerstone was said to have been laid. And it's not an actual newspaper account that recorded the circumstances of the cornerstone being put into place. Actually, it was a letter attributed only to a gentleman from Philadelphia. And right there in the very first line of that letter is the answer to at least part of the mystery. Forget Masonic tradition and practice. The cornerstone was never placed in the northeast corner of the building, as is traditionally done. For some reason, it was actually put in the southwest corner. No explanation is given for the southwest location of the stone, but there had to have been one. Masons apparently never do anything without a good or at least arcane reason, but the revelations even get better. According to that letter, the cornerstone did have a commemorative plate. One was evidently not affixed to its exterior. The letter describes a brass plate that bore the following words: "This first stone in the President's house was laid the 12th day of October, 1792, and in the 17th year of the independence of the United States of America." And then below it had the name George Washington, President, Thomas Jefferson, Dr. Stewart, Commissioners. Thomas Johnson, Dr. Stewart, Commissioners, Daniel Carroll, James Hoban, Architect, Colleen Williamson, Master Mason, and Vivant Republica. With the exception of Thomas Johnson, all the men listed on the plaque are known to be Masons. Now, the letter makes it clear the stone was laid on Saturday, October 13th, but the brass plate actually identifies Friday, October 12th as the date. This And of course, the discrepancy in date could have happened for any reason. Now, there is, of course, an archaic reason for using October 13th. On that date in 1307, Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of the leaders of the Knights Templar, a powerful medieval organization that a lot of folks feel is closely related to the Freemasons which developed far later, as we know it today. With his order, Philip IV essentially destroyed the group on Friday the 13th. And that led to the widespread but probably inaccurate belief that this event set in motion our superstitions about Friday the 13th. Now, a few historians place credence in this theory of the origin of the Friday the 13th superstition, but not many more believe the almost equally widespread belief that the Knights Templar somehow went into hiding, preserving their special symbols and codes, and resurfaced as a new group, the Freemasons. But keep that in mind the next time you hear about a Masonic conspiracy centered on Friday the 13th. Now, as searches went on for the White House Cornerstone, it's easy to find people that blamed it all on the Freemasons. A lot of folks said the Masons were a part of a new world order. Their goal was to rule the world. They're even responsible for the deaths of others. One of those was filmmaker Chris Pinto, who devoted a large portion of his life and career to investigating what he sees as the darker sides of secret societies, including the Freemasons. He cites the story of William Morgan, a Baptist minister who in 1826 was kidnapped and murdered after announcing he was going to expose the secrets of the Freemasons. Yet Pinto believes that while there were high-ranking Masons who extol many virtues, there's an inner circle of leaders who control and guide the organization toward far darker goals that include world domination. And Masons who live next door to you and whose lodge devotes itself to community good works is, according to Pinto, no more aware of that inner circle than anybody else is. No question, that's something of an extremist view, written off by many. But let's not forget the Freemasons are, in fact, a secret society. They do keep secrets. I mean, that's what they do. But do you want to know why the Masons really don't want to talk to most people? Especially when there's a TV camera present. Because everybody burns them. Everybody blames them for every bad thing that's happened in the world. So as the search began, they explained to the Freemasons what they were looking for. Showed them their evidence, asked for their help, and they actually let the investigators inside their groups, making theirs one of only 3 camera crews who were allowed to tape inside the Scottish Rite headquarters in Washington, D.C. That's known as the House of the Temple, don't you know? This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to go right to the source. Well, starting in 1911, the headquarters of Scottish Rite Freemasonry is modeled on the Persian tomb of Mausolus, original mausoleum, which became one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Got 2 giant limestone sphinxes that guard the entrance. Sphinxes have human faces but lions' bodies. And they represent 2 pillars of Masonic belief, wisdom and strength. The building itself is a labyrinth of rooms and passageways. Symbols like the 2-headed eagle, which represents power over east and west, decorate the walls. And you see symbols like pyramids and triangles everywhere. It's a nod to the Masons' origins as builders. The triangle, which has its 3 sides, has been a sacred symbol for thousands of years. But to Masons, it reminds them of the 3 degrees of Masonry, 3 orders of architecture. For the Catholic Masons, it's a symbol of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Y'all see eyes, the eye of providence. It's a reminder to Masons that the Supreme Being watches and judges their words and actions. And you see those on buildings and corporate logos, and even on the back of the dollar bill. Well, the biggest room in the building is known as the Temple Room. It's what the Supreme Council convenes every 2 years to elect 33rd degree Masons. Just outside is the seat where a guard is placed in what's known as the Tyler's seat to protect against non-Masons from entering. The inscription on the back of the chair says, "Know thyself," which was written on ancient temples. Albert Pike, the father of modern-day Masonry, is always close by. He's entombed in one of the building's walls. Now, as the tour went on through the House of the Temple, found some of history's greatest artifacts, a flag that astronaut Neil Armstrong took into space to the moon. Armstrong and John Glenn and Buzz Aldrin were all Freemasons. The actual desk from J. Edgar Hoover's FBI office, he's also a Freemason. Even a small stone from the White House. And for a moment, everybody thought this was what they were looking for, especially when they saw the Masonic symbols, the compass and the square on the stone. So the question became, how did this piece wind up in the headquarters of the Scottish Rite Freemasons? Well, it was sent there personally by President Truman. Now, one of the highest-ranking Masons to have been President of the United States was Harry S. Truman. 33rd President, became a Mason in 1909. Member of the Grandview Lodge, number 618 in Grandview, Missouri. In the course of over a half-century of Masonic membership, Truman's the only presidential Freemason to have celebrated the golden anniversary in the Brotherhood. He reached the level of 33rd degree Mason. That congruence, our 33rd president was also a 33rd degree Mason, has fed more than one conspiracy theory over the years. Well, Truman incidentally was proud and hardly secretive about his Freemason membership. He's reported to have claimed to be more proud of his rank within the Masons than he was of having been president. Now, frankly, I'm not sure I believe that, but then again, Truman was well known for saying things provocatively in a way that nobody ever expected. So what was Truman's tie to the White House Cornerstone? Well, in 1949, during the Truman administration, the White House went through a substantial renovation, which is when they added what we know today as the Truman Balcony. The People's House, as it was called, had fallen into such disrepair that a lot of folks, if they knew its true condition, might have refused to live there. So as the building was being gutted all the way to its foundations, this struck many as the perfect time to make a concerted effort to find the cornerstone that had been missing since 1792. Well, during that search, they ran a World War II mine detector across the foundation of the White House, and that device gave off its distinctive ping, 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 indicating the presence of a metal object in the White House foundation. So everybody knew this was it, the moment everybody had been waiting for. They knew they had found the cornerstone. Well, we'll never know because Truman himself gave the word not to spend any more effort trying to locate the cornerstone. Location of the stone in question would make excavating it tricky, structurally questionable, and probably most important of all, very expensive. He was notably a frugal president, had enough problems with Congress without picking a fight over removing a stone that would either have to be put back into place or completely replaced afterward. And there's another twist to the story. As the less structurally important walls of the White House were broken open during the renovation, Truman ordered that a block of stone from the executive mansion be sent to the Masonic temples across the country. One block for one temple in each of the then 48 states. And here's the best part. Each of these stones from the White House, like the one in the Scottish Rite headquarters today, bore the construction mark of a working Freemason. Well, frankly, it's quite easy to say you could build a conspiracy out of something like that. But when that question was posed to the Freemason scholars and historian Arturo de Hoyos and S. Brent Morris, they didn't just get surprising openness and candor. They got answers that actually made sense. Why would anybody want to keep the location of such a stone secret? Was the question that was asked of the Freemason scholars and historians. Why'd you want to do that and not advertise it to the world that you found it? I think you want to brag about it. And for most of us, as with the Freemasons, it's far more likely to celebrate the rediscovery of such an important piece of our history and do so with a bit of special pride that it was Freemasons who put the stone in place to begin with. Well, that actually sounded logical. But what if the cornerstone was filled with something powerful, even mystical? What about the code of secrecy the Freemasons agreed to? According to Hoyos, I wish I knew the powers that I had being a member of this. Because when I received the 33rd degree, I found out that I still had to pay for HBO and Cinemax. Went on to talk openly about the Morgan affair that Freemason critics love to feature. He acknowledged that the murder might have happened because somebody gave away Freemason secrets. It wasn't sanctioned by the Freemasons, though. It was a group of people that did something stupid. So in Hoyos's eyes, and when it came to the White House Cornerstone, if I'm going to admit to a Masonic murder per se, don't you think I'd tell you about some rock? We'd be happy to pull it out and parade it up and down the street. What about all the secret? Well, there's another missing cornerstone of democracy, the cornerstone of the Capitol building itself. According to Hoyos and Morris, in addition to the White House, nobody knows the location of the Capitol's cornerstone either. For some expert insight, documentarian Jackson Polk, who was captured on film some of the efforts to locate the missing Capitol cornerstone, which was laid by George Washington himself. In 1988, with the bicentennial of the Capitol approaching, the architect of the Capitol decided he wanted to locate the Capitol cornerstone. Quickly discovered an independent effort to do so was already underway. Charlie Scala, an air conditioning mechanic for the Capitol, became fascinated with the missing cornerstone and began searching, digging, and drilling into the cavernous basements of the Capitol. He did it without any official permission, and his archaeological curiosity was matched by a sense of how things worked in Washington. When he was confronted by the Capitol architect about his freelance exploration of the Capitol's foundation, the exploration the architect wanted stopped, Scala was holding a very powerful set of cards. He made several U.S. senators who happened to be Freemasons aware of his efforts, and the senators not only approved of his search, but instructed the architect to give Scala every possible assistance that he could. According to Jackson Polk, Scala was almost undoubtedly within 6 or 8 feet of uncovering the Capitol cornerstone deep beneath the Senate when the word came down that the political reality had to be addressed. People in the House of Representatives were upset the Senate was getting all the attention. They did enough digging beneath the Senate. Now the House is turning. For no other reason, the dig was stopped and moved. Needless to say, the stone was never found. The whole thing sounded like just a lot of silliness. Still, according to Polk's video footage, they believe the Capitol cornerstone is exactly where George Washington put it, not far from where Scala was digging. And despite all the conspiracy theories, it hadn't been stolen or even hidden, just covered up by the accumulation of additional construction, reinforcing stones, and other materials over the course of 2.25 centuries. And that's where it's probably going to remain. And on that note, we come to the end of today's show. I want to wish everybody a very happy new year. Hopefully 2026 is going to be a better year than 2025. So until tomorrow, at this time, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show, saying have a truly great evening and a great 2026.